You let your hair grow.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I saw you, or maybe I just didn't recognize or something.
The church has to be virtual.
Yes.
Virtual.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, the owl.
I hate the camera.
I don't like that. It's too loud to speak. That's it's just.
I just don't like my face. No.
No, like, don't talk like that. I
It's
don't wanna
not-
hear that.
Yeah, well, whether you guys look.
No,
And then you guys.
I feel it already, but no, what do you?
Just can't man, where no matter who you talk to about your age, they tell you you're young. Because the average age limit is like 40 years of age person.
Yeah.
Know what I know?
They have a little calculator.
Oh,
right? I don't think it's Marvin.
So we have exciting. Sure. I was.
Probably just do those people. I got it online. But they started doing a lot of weird like different songs. Yeah, but they don't come to us more.
Their breakfast is amazing.
The breakfast was sometimes challenging. There's a lot of fish. One person he's running late. I don't know.
Like it's too much.
Oh, and then you're was number two. So once Ankur gets here, we'll have.
Oh, I.
Two, three. Yeah, one hotel is the like the mountain scenario morning. There's record the snowiest city in the world. Snow morning. They do not use a tenth of salt or use disgusting.
Don't get me started.
They have soy sauce there, right?
Oh, no, I mean. I mean on the ground.
Oh. Like you said in that food. Oh, on the ground.
Snowfall is higher than like the balls here, like 10 feet high. But, they have like both Western and Japanese breakfast options, so I mean, switching between them.
I'm glad you had a good time.
Western.
Yeah.
I'm envious.
I also don't know why this train.
How was your, just with your, your transfer? What's up?
I got back Tuesday. It was a long Tuesday, you know.
Yeah.
It's
The longest in years.
Yeah, you could get started.
George's screen.
That is George's screen.
From your.
This is the January 23rd meeting of Manhattan Community Board 5 Transportation and Environment Committee. Hey, George, I think you're sharing your screen. If you could just stop sharing and we'll come back to you later in the meeting. Hey, George.
Up there.
There you go. Thank you. I'm David Sigmund, Chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee, joined by Samir Lavingia, the Vice Chair.
Do you mind making me a copy?
Any items voted on at this meeting will appear at the full Community Board 5 board meeting on Thursday, February 13th. We have 3 items on the agenda today. The first is a presentation by the New York City Department of Design and Construction on a project on 42nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenues for pedestrian safety. And then we will see a presentation by DOT and the MTA on the 34th Street Enhanced Bus Priority Project. And then we'll have a discussion internally on the various topics that the committee is going to be looking at for 2025. So if we could go around the room first and then online, if you could just identify yourselves and members of the committee.
Leading last time. Joel Maxman, on the committee. Azul Zolkowitz.
Neil Miller.
Nancy Gosha.
Christopher Nazaro.
And online. Tristan, I think you're it for now.
We cannot hear you. All right, well, Tristan, you want to wave? All right, Tristan Haas, and then George Akalis is also with us. And then I'm Samir Lavingia, Vice Chair of the committee.
Okay. So before we jump into the agenda, I think we have some members of the public that have new business that they'd like to raise. We do this at the beginning of the meeting, so members of the public don't have to wade through all of the agenda items if they are here to raise a new topic. So you guys are here on together on the same topic, or
Yes.
Okay. So if you want to introduce yourselves and
Yes, my name is Tom Sawyer. I live in the district at West 16th Street, number 54. And I wanted to speak to the board about a moratorium that I understand is in place against street renaming issues or co-naming issues.
And yes, my name is Lennox Salmon. I don't live in the district, but I was contacted by Tom here because I was very interested in this subject and raised the possibility a couple of years ago.
okay.
But Tom really took the momentum to alert me to new effort, a new push.
So I can give you.
Sure.
Well, let's see. I learned, my wife picked up on it, that there had been a petition started some years ago to rename our block Joni Mitchell Way. Because it is the place where it has the apartment that she landed in when she came to New York before any fame. And it's the place where she lived, where she made the connections that ultimately, gelled into her career. To the point that the song, well, all the songs I understand that were on the Clouds album, including Chelsea Morning, were written while she lived in that apartment. And she made her first really significant connection with Judy Collins one night when she came home with a friend and played the song for the friend, and he said, "Wait a minute." And he called Judy, who was living uptown, and said, "You got to hear this." It became, Judy said, I gotta do that song. It was a great mental line. So the value of all this, realizing that it's a ground floor front apartment at a corner across the street from me. It's morning sunlight through the windows as described in the Chelsea Morning song. It's a place where you will hear pipes and drums on the street as referenced in the song every time there's a policeman's bugle in the church across the street. It's just got so many site-specific references. And it's also just lovely to imagine Joni coming up Sixth Avenue from, the park, the performing places and at night, lugging her guitar. And I can imagine what it must be like or have been like in the summer with the windows open, all time listening her tracks. So I think it's, it's just a really strong site-specific thing. And Joni is at a point in her career where she has come back from, catastrophic health issues to get back up on stage and once again inspire the generation. So I think it's just rarely appropriate. And I'd like to push it after having heard of this petition, and I would like to circulate, a petition with this kind of information on it, including to our Thursday. Will take you to hear her performance of the song, John Burton, Dick Cavett, in, contemporaneous. I would like to, I'd like to see the moratorium. I understand it may have been put in place for safety reasons to avoid confusing drivers with a lot of things signed it, but I don't think anybody's much confused about where they are going up Fifth Avenue, crossing West 16th Street. It's not 14th Street, but they turning back north coming down there. So I doubt it's much of a safety issue.
Do you want to address the whole history of co-naming for,
Yeah, I can give a quick overview. I forget when we passed the original resolution, but at some point. Committee Board 5 was getting a number of co-naming requests. And we put a moratorium on it, I think maybe in 2003. And last year, we reaffirmed that position. We didn't take a vote on it at the committee or at the full board. It just was decided that since we had taken that position 20 years ago, the position should still stand 20 years later. And so now we're relooking at that because, a lot has changed in the last 20 years. It probably doesn't make sense to just blanket assume that something we passed 20 years ago is still our current position. So we have a few people on the committee looking at how we want to deal with street co-namings going forward. Other committees or other community boards do it different ways. Some of them take them on one by one. Some of them have a list of criteria, and if you hit the criteria, then they'll usually approve it. The one that I know that was most recently passed was Jamal Khashoggi Way in Community Board 6 on the east side, just to give a sense for the types of things that other community boards would approve. And yeah, so we have people looking at it, and we can figure out how we want to move forward with this type of request. And then the other, sorry, just last thing I forgot. The other reason that we're also looking at it again is because council members have asked us to look into it. Because they have asked us, how do we feel about a specific co-naming right now? We have our moratorium, so we say, no, thank you, and then they do whatever they want. So our hope is that we can be more involved in the process with our council members.
yeah, that's what I was gonna point out, is that the fact that we haven't opined on them doesn't mean that they haven't happened in our district. So, pursuing it through, yes, through the city council member, that overlaps with that location is the other route to go in while we're figuring out, what we're gonna do. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you have to be deceased to be co-named, is that true? I don't know. So, we'll share up to that, yeah.
Yeah, I love this, love her. I'm on 28th between Fifth and Madison. On the other side, west of me is Tin Pan Alley. And a lot of the music has changed over the years, and Johnny's had incredible contributions to the scene, and I think this would be terrific. I think as David points out, Eric Botcher, that's should be in District 3, City Council District 3. I think he could be interested in this. I think that's Flatiron Nomad right there, right there.
I think we're outside, yeah.
Yeah. Is it within their area?
Yeah.
Do they go as far
It's not-
as Sixth Avenue?
I come to your
No.
office, they recommended I come here.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna see David, I'm gonna see James Meason tomorrow, the president. I think he might be interested, but definitely the bid and the council member.
I think that location's outside of any of the bids, because it would be Union Square, and it's north of. the
It's
Union
between
Square.
5th and 6th.
Yeah, but the bid doesn't go off of like 14th Street and that area, but anyway. So yeah, I mean, for Community Board 5, it's on our list of things to take a closer look at. It's actually something we're gonna be, kind of stepping through tonight. The general issue of whether we have a moratorium or not. And yeah, beyond that, you feel free to reach out to council member and see if they're prepared to take a look at it. There are rules. I just don't know sitting here what the rules are.
You can tonight with either a decision one way or the other, or perhaps no decision. In other words, I started with the city councilman, and they said I should talk to you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
If I go back, I need.
Yeah, no, today we're really just going through a list of topics, and trying to figure out what we're gonna be addressing, as a topic. We're not gonna be delving into the specific.
They'll just say it's under
Yes.
consideration.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Those that have been approved, because they're clearly, when you walk around and you see co-named streets, they get approved by the council member without us. Okay. So they could do that.
One last recommendation, if you do get it, they recommend they put a QR code on sign to make it a hell of a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, update it. Okay, thank you.
so much.
Nice meeting you. Thanks for making it.
Okay, if there's nobody else that wants to raise a new business item, we'll move into the agenda. So just to talk about the order of business. We'll see the presentations from DDC, DOT and the MTA. And members of the committee can then ask questions or make comments. After that, we'll take comments from the public. At the committee, there's no time limit on comments, but we do ask that you try and keep things succinct and avoid repetition with other comments. After all the public comment has been received, we'll enter into a committee business session where only committee members will discuss the matter with no further input from the presenter or the public unless requested by the chair. And finally, if appropriate, we will craft a motion and take a vote for a resolution. And after the last agenda item, since we've already covered new business, we'll adjourn the meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to DDC on the 42nd Street project.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Marlene Nunez, Borough Outreach Coordinator for DDC. I'm here with the DDC design team. They will be presenting for tonight's meeting. Andrea.
Everyone, I'm Andrea Nunez, the engineer in charge of the design contract for 42nd Street perimeter security measures. With me, I have representatives from DOT, project management, as well as the Borough Commissioner's Office. We have representatives from DDC program management. We have Times Square Alliance that has been a partner with us on this project. And we have the design consultant team that I'll turn the floor over to Matthew Kusi, who's the project manager for the design of the project. Matthew?
Thanks, Andrea. And thanks everybody for giving us the opportunity to present to you this evening. So this is the 42nd Street Pedestrian Security Measures Project located between 7th and 8th Avenue. I'll go through just quickly the overall agenda. We'll give a quick background, show an overall project location, the main goals of the project. We'll describe the funding and the stakeholders involved. We'll go into a little bit on what Envision is and how we're using it as a framework for sustainability on the project. Then we'll move to site photos and existing conditions. And then finally, we'll go into the concept plans, proposed work on the utilities, the bollard layouts and security elements, and then the project schedule. So I think everybody is probably very familiar with the background of this area. We're located in the theater district. It's very intensely pedestrian traffic, and there's a lot of congestion there on the sidewalks and the existing condition. There's just a lot of tourism and entertainment land uses, and in addition to major transit facilities, the Port Authority bus terminal, bus stops. Recently in 2019, DOT installed bus lanes on 42nd Street to improve the bus speeds, and in the project limits here on between 7th and 8th Avenues, there were extra wide bus lanes installed to save space for this eventual sidewalk widening that we're making as part of this project, along with the pedestrian security infrastructure proposed. So here's just an overall site plan to show you the location. We're between 7th and 8th. We do extend down 7th Avenue a bit and down Broadway for some water main work as well. So the main goals of the project, number one, ease that sidewalk congestion and improve pedestrian safety. So we're widening the sidewalks by 5 or 6 feet on the north and south sides of 42nd Street. We're introducing along that new curb line, new perimeter security for pedestrians to be protected from aberrant drivers. And then we're also fully reconstructing the roadway and installing new 48-inch trunk water main down 42nd Street to replace the existing which is over 100 years old. We have also some distribution, water main, 12, 20-inch, and a little bit of combined sewer replacement as well. And under all of this, we're looking at how the scope of this project can be looked at and improved from a sustainability perspective to achieve the highest rating in the Envision framework. So a little bit on the funding and stakeholders. So the city DOT has capital funding for the construction of this project, 41.7 million. For the DEP water main and utility work, we have 15.2 million. There's a number of stakeholders that we are engaged with, including you, Community Board 5, Times Square Alliance, who's on the call. Port Authority Bus Terminal is right adjacent to our site, so we're coordinating with them. And New York Police Department and FDNY, Parks, and Broadway League. So just getting a little bit more into the Envision, if those that are not familiar with it, it's similar to the LEED rating system for buildings. So it's the equivalent of that for infrastructure projects. The city has been introducing this as part of the design scope so that we consider at the early stages of design different ways that we can improve sustainability and resiliency for infrastructure projects within the city. So we have been developing that since we kicked off the project, and as part of that, we ask for early and sustained stakeholder engagement. So there was in the mass mailing distribution that we sent out last May and to the community boards, we included a number of questions related to what you would like to see and receiving feedback on various questions that would fulfill the requirements for the Envision framework and help us to better understand your concerns and ideas on how we can be more sustainable and resilient with this project. So we can reshare that if that is helpful, but that was distributed with the mass mailing #1 drawings last May. So going into the existing condition, we have a few photos on the 8th Avenue side. Top right is the Port Authority bus terminal. They have existing bollards there surrounding the terminal. And then a few photos looking east and west from 8th Avenue on 42nd. Mid-block on 42nd, we have a few photos. You can see there are temporary concrete barriers there. Those will be removed and replaced with the permanent bollards and security elements that we're proposing as part of this project. And then on 7th Avenue, you can see top right, we have existing bollards that will be basically continuing that bollard line down 42nd Street on both sides. So this is just an overall plan of the existing condition going into a blow up of the 8th Ave side. So we have the bus lanes, like we said, on 42nd Street that were introduced in 2019. There's a bike lane going down 8th Avenue. We have a number of bus stops on in the project limits, and we have several subway entrances. So there's a lot of different things to contend with and coordinate with as we're developing this design. Same thing on the 7th Avenue side, the bus lanes and bike infrastructure there, as well as some more subway entrances. And here, just to visually understand, it's pretty much pedestrian circulation is heavy in all directions. Like I said, the 8th Avenue side, we have the Port Authority bus terminal. We've got several subway lines. And then, of course, we're right near Times Square there. So a lot of activity. Here's just some images of existing street furniture in the area that that we've identified. The very top left is the bollards that are existing on 7th Ave that we intend to continue extending down 42nd Street. So here's an overall concept plan, and we'll go into the west and east sides as well. So the dashed line here represents the limit of the full reconstruction of the street and sidewalks that we are proposing. Along the curb line, you can see that the dots represent the new bollards, and we have the little rectangles represent new security rated planters. So that's all along the widened sidewalk on both sides. And we will be maintaining the bus lanes in both directions on 42nd Street. Same thing on the 7th Avenue side. We do extend down 7th Ave to 41st on the west side. We're widening that sidewalk as well. And then this is an overview of the existing trunk water main, distribution water main and combined sewer that we are replacing. So the main line running down 42nd here is the 48-inch trunk main that we'll be replacing as part of this project. And then on 7th Avenue, there's a small portion of the combined sewer in the sidewalk and some smaller distribution water main on 8th Ave and Broadway. Here's just a more detailed look at those bollards and security planters that are being proposed on the new sidewalk. So you can see there's also some existing infrastructure here. We have existing newsstands will be moving, or that will be moved to the new curb line, just moved in the same place that they are today. And then we've identified where we can propose the security planters based on pedestrian circulation and loading and unloading activities for the businesses along 42nd Street. And this is an elevation view of that same area with the planters and the bollards. And this is a perspective view looking down from the mid-block area on 42nd Street. We do have the distinctive paving pattern that we're proposing as part of the project. And that's a close-up of the material. These are the same bollards that are on 42nd and 7th Ave right now, going up north from the project site. We are proposing to match the finish and style of those bollard covers. Similarly, we'll be proposing security planters with the brushed stainless steel finish. Okay, and then just an overview of the project schedule. We did receive approval from DOT back in May of 23 on the curb geometry. We distributed mass mailing number 1 last May. We're intending to go to PDC this spring for the preliminary submission. We did do an informal submission last July. And we also intend to distribute mass mailing number 2 this coming spring as well. The intention would be to start construction in summer of 26, and that would be for 4 years, duration of 4 years for the construction. Just in terms of next steps, we would be looking for a letter of support from the community board so that we can submit that with our PDC submission that we intend to submit in the spring. We're advancing and continuing to advance the design, including the security bollards and planters. And we'd also be looking for your feedback on those envision questions. And just leaving here the contact info for Marilyn, who will work with the community boards impacted by the construction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just, let me get the ball rolling. I have a few questions and then we'll open it up to the rest of the committee.
Yep.
Did Community Board 5 respond to mass mailing #1? Because I don't have any recollection of our doing that. So if you do have something from us that you can send back to us, we would love to see that. Yeah.
I don't have a record. I don't know, Andrea, if I don't think we received anything, right?
No, design has not received any correspondence. I think the request was for a presentation, but we were finalizing or we were developing the security measures approach around the planters. And so here we are presenting the briefing.
Okay, and then there'll be a mass mailing #2 and an Envision questionnaire, and we can respond at that time. And is that the plan?
So sorry. I guess, I mean, ideally we'd hear from you before mass mailing #2. The sooner the better we have your input so we can take it into consideration as we advance the design. So, you know, we're happy to share that questionnaire with you again after this meeting and receive your feedback on those questions.
Okay. And on the PDC submission where you want our, I mean, you know, the intention is to talk about it tonight and hopefully take a resolution to the full board in February. And that seems more than adequate to the timing that you have here, right? You just want it before your submission to PDC.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. On the design, I guess the question, we had just passed with Community Boards 4 and 6, a joint resolution asking for DOT, DDC, whoever would be involved on a continuous redevelopment of 42nd Street. And I guess the question is, well, and not just that, but we also recently had a resolution in support of the work that DDC is doing on Broadway between 38th and 40th. So from a design standpoint, do you see all of this being consistent with what you've presented here? Is there a consistent design language now for these kinds of projects, or is this literally, you know, each piece is standalone? How do you see the one block's worth of design language you have here and the 2 blocks that we saw on Broadway? How do you see that rolling out on future projects?
I can take that question. My name's Casey Grell with DOT's Public Realm Unit. I was at the presentation for Broadway Boulevard last month. I think in general, we are trying to be as consistent as possible while also recognizing the kind of unique spaces for all these projects. So 42nd Street is a very unique corridor, which is somewhat different from the Broadway corridor. So we use a very standard palette of treatments for all of our projects, but then try to work in unique design features. Specifically for this project, we have the London scoring paving pattern, which closely resembles the paving pattern through the Times Square plazas to really create some continuity with those spaces. However, moving down Broadway into Garment District, we chose a different pavement pattern to kind of respond to the history of the Garment District on that section of Broadway. So we try to make everything legible and consistent from a design perspective while acknowledging the very unique historical context of each site location. And in regards to the busway comment, I think this project does achieve some of those goals by widening sidewalks without going the full measure with a full busway, mostly just due to its limited scope. This is only 1 block. But it does essentially leave the correct dimensions for a busway proposal in the future if that is determined at a future date. So it doesn't preclude it. It's just not making that operational change as part of this reconstruction.
I had some more specific questions, but why don't we open it up and then I'll come back. Yeah, Zor.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're trying to do the highest level Envision standards. I mean, the sustainability and the resiliencies, particularly since, I mean, this water main replacement, the sewage, huge project. Are you considering permeable asphalt is that a part of Envision? I know you used it out in Auburn and Queens.
Yes, that's something that we've been looking at. I think there's certain criteria for where we can propose it based on the location here and the amount of traffic and bus lanes and commercial district that it's in. There are a lot of
Underground
restrictions.
transit.
Obviously, yeah, underground transit, not to mention. There's a lot of restrictions in terms of where we can put that and propose it. So it's very likely not possible on this project, but it is something we did consider.
And imagine, for the same reasons, you obviously can't do street trees here. So glad to see, what you're suggesting in terms of the security planters. And obviously, you're not going to want them to go too high, but it would be lovely if we can get a lot of green in there. On the bike lanes, I mean, essentially the major bike lanes are on the avenues, but when we talk about pedestrian security, we're always getting questions about the e-bikes, the motorcycles, whatever these motorized bikes are. So just, I hope this is just a lot of coordination going on about that, and also with enforcement, because that may be really what we have to look at. Lastly, starting construction summer of 2026, Port Authority should be in, David would be in pretty much full build at that time. So coordination in terms of, all the disruptions that may be caused in that area.
That's an ongoing conversation. We have quarterly meetings with Port Authority where we're coordinating the multiple projects that are taking place in Midtown. And we're in the process of preparing our construction staging drawings, and it's in development as we finalize final design through the rest of this year.
Thank you.
Samir?
Would you mind just repeating the sidewalk widening changes? Was it 5 feet on the north side?
Yeah, so it's about 5 to 6 feet on the north and south sidewalks of 42nd. So the roadway width at the end will be 44 feet, so 4 11-foot lanes.
Got it. So, I mean, looking at Street View right now, it's basically the same configuration, like a bus lane, 2 travel lanes in the middle, then another bus lane. So where is that 5 to 6 feet on either side coming from?
So yeah, in 2019, when DOT installed the bus lanes, they made them extra wide on this block. So we would just be reducing the width of the existing bus lanes for the widening.
Got it. Would you expect that to have any impact on bus speeds if perhaps there's double parking and previously they were able to get around them, now they would not? Is there any concern around that?
I don't think so at this time. I think currently the bus lanes aren't wide enough, so if someone's parked in them, a bus has to go into the travel lane regardless, because it's like a 16-foot lane. If there's double parking today, it would have a minimal impact on bus operations. There would be a potential impact with this proposed condition. However, we don't see a lot of double parking currently. Most of the curb is no standing during the AM and PM rush hour, so it's really just during that mid-afternoon time where we see loading activity. But it is something we can take into consideration post-construction for additional operational changes, curb regulation changes, and even, the board has asked us to explore a busway, so that is something we can take under consideration.
Great. Thank you.
Any other,
Joel, question. I have a question actually about this diagram. So when you showed it the first time, you mentioned that the dots represent the bollards, and honestly, I can't see the dots. And can you just kind of give an overview of where the bollards are, how far apart they are?
Yep. So the tan is the new sidewalk, and at the curb line along the bus lanes here, yeah, it is hard to read, but there's little dots along the curb line there, and they're spaced 5 feet apart.
Did they turn the corner on 8th Avenue and 7th there?
They do, yes. So we're extending the sidewalks a little bit to the north of 42nd and south. So we have a shorter crossing for pedestrians across 8th Avenue. And in those areas, we're extending, adding bollards there as well. And then on the 7th Avenue side, we have bollards connecting the bollard line on the north side up 7th Avenue, the ones that exist there today. And then we cover I guess it's the southwest corner of the 7th and 42nd, and that's where we turn into the building line, and that's the extent of the bollard perimeter.
Thank you.
Yeah, Neil.
Yeah, I had a question about that. So it looks like on the southwest corner of 42nd and 7th, there's the ones right on the corner, and that makes a lot of sense. I was wondering about the ones on the south, covering going across the sidewalk on 7th Avenue, on the west side of 7th Avenue, at that intersection. It seems like there's bollards like in the middle of the sidewalk, not directly facing the street.
Yep.
So what's the thinking behind that? It seems sometimes like that would impede the people's ability to move around if you're carrying a suitcase or stroller, and there wouldn't be as much car traffic, hopefully right on the sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean, we try to, I mean, so NYPD has identified this area as a high profile area for pedestrian security. So the idea is to extend and have an envelope, an entire perimeter around the sidewalk, so that an errant vehicle could not enter that sidewalk area at any point along the bollard line. So that's the intent when we come back in towards the building line like that. The spacing of the bollards is 5 feet there, so there is space enough between the bollards for circulation. And we do the same thing on the 8th Avenue side. It's a little bit harder to see, but at the end of the limits at the dotted lines, the bollard line turns in towards the building there as well.
Okay. Yeah, and I also was just curious to learn more about the benefits of the water main reconstruction. Obviously, replacing something that's 100 years old is good. Will it increase capacity or the number of how much use can be supported? Because we're also talking about the rezoning in the Midtown South area, which this includes. So there'll probably be more and different uses. So I'm curious if it increases capacity.
So we're replacing the 48-inch water main in kind. There are some distribution water mains that were increasing in size from 12 to 20-inch. But the main trunk water main, we're not increasing in size. I can't speak to, accounting for the capacity for what might be built in the future, but this is what DEP scope has laid out.
Anybody else in the room? I think it's on page 17. I just wanted some clarification on how the bike lanes are working. It was a little hard to tell from, could you just walk us through so 8th Avenue, it seems like there's a dotted line that runs through the intersection and then continues on the south side of 42nd. I didn't see that on 7th Avenue, and it wasn't clear, is Broadway, does that run all the way up on the north side of Broadway? I guess that becomes pedestrian only at some point. So if you could just kind of walk us through how each, I guess, of these 3 bike lanes work in this area.
Yeah, so the one on 7th Ave was actually just installed over the summer, between 42nd and 41st. I think it had originally stopped north of 42nd, and now it extends going south. And the one on 8th Avenue, it's the northbound bikeway, whereas 7th is the southbound. And then Broadway is southbound.
And the Broadway one originates at 42nd. It's just discontinuous from. You know, I just don't know enough about what the rest of the context is for that bikeway. To the north.
Yeah,
is a
Casey,
pedestrian-
do you know
Yeah,
the
I can-
specifics on that? Thanks.
Yeah, I can jump in and answer that question. So that the Broadway bike lane is actually the old kind of 7th Avenue bike lane. Before 7th Avenue was installed, cyclists were directed to use 42nd Street for that short block to then go south on Broadway. There's kind of larger discussions about the Broadway corridor, so we're kind of still continuing to talk about what happens with that bike lane now that 7th Avenue is installed. But as Matthew said, the 7th Avenue lane goes all the way down to 34th Street. The 8th Avenue lane is currently there. There's really no change proposed as part of this project. They'll be replaced in kind as they are today.
Okay, and then just a detailed question was it where the 7th Avenue one crosses over 42nd Street, the crosswalk is actually quite wide. So does it actually cut through the crosswalk to continue on the, for the north connection, the north of 42nd to south? Does it actually cut through the proposed crosswalk? What's really going on in that area?
Yeah, I think that needs to be corrected. It will be doing what's shown on 8th Avenue will be replicated on 7th Avenue. I think that's the existing extent of the sidewalk because there was temporary material on the corner there before this bike lane was installed. So yeah, we'll make that correction. Thank you for pointing that out.
Sure. And then I had questions about turn lanes because I just can't remember what exists today. You show eastbound left turn onto 8th. It looks like there's is that the only turn that's shown here? The rest of them are just through? Oh, no, there's a left turn onto Broadway, it seems, east of Broadway. So where are turns actually going to be allowed in this plan?
Yeah, so like you said, on 42nd at 8th Avenue, there's a leftbound onto 8th. Going north on 8th Avenue, there is the rightmost lane is a through and a right turn lane. Then going on the 7th Ave side, there are no turns from 42nd Street onto 7th Avenue. But on 7th Avenue, there are turns coming southbound. There's a left turn onto 42nd Street. And then like you said, traveling from the east on 42nd, there's a left turn to Broadway. We're not changing that, any of those movements that exist today.
And then where those turning lanes exist, they're only for a short distance and then it goes back to one lane in each direction closer to the middle of each block, or I mean, in terms of where this is going in the future?
Yeah, I think in general, anything outside the project limits is remaining as it is today. We're not proposing any changes to the east of Broadway or to the west of 8th Avenue. So whatever you see out there today is what will be there once this project's complete.
Okay. Let's see if that was it. Okay, are there any questions from members of the committee that are on Zoom? No? All right, then we can open it up to the public. If anybody has any questions, use the raise hand feature. And then we'll ask you to unmute yourself, and if you can, turn your video on and identify yourself. And you can ask a question or make a comment.
Go ahead, Miriam.
I'm just trying to turn on my video. Somehow it disappeared. I was at the meeting the other night at Community Board 4 when there was also a presentation. And I had a specific question that I posed about the bus stops because I've been a big advocate for being sure that these are accessible for people with disabilities, with benches and shelters, and we all need shelters in the snow and the rain, especially with climate changes, foreseen in our future. And has any further thought been given to improving the shelters? Because as I remember, the discussion was that they were just poles letting you know this is a bus stop. What's happening with that? Is there any further thought with that?
I think we're still evaluating what could be proposed for that. I think I don't know, Casey, if there's been any further discussions in the last week.
No, since it's only been a week, we haven't made any changes. This is the exact same presentation, but I think we took that note from the CB4 meeting and we can take it from this meeting as well to further investigate bus stop amenities and furnishings.
Next up is Leroy Lee.
Hi there. My name is Leroy Lee. I'm with the New 42. We were also at the CB4 meeting, but we wanted to make sure we also communicated sort of our thoughts to CB5 as well. So just for some context, if you don't know about our organization, we were founded during the 80s as part of the redevelopment efforts from the city and the state of 42nd Street and Times Square. We were established to redevelop and restore and oversee the historic theater properties on the block. We continue to be stewards of the block and historic theater properties today and are one of the largest stakeholders of the block 42nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. We operate 2 buildings, one being the New Victory Theater, which is New York City's only theater dedicated to young audiences and families. So we are very excited about this project, and we thank DDC and DOT and their consultants for this work. And we see a lot of progress since we first saw the initial designs of the project, and we really appreciate it. But we just had a few comments that we'd like to see incorporated or pushed further, and then as we refine this design. One, we're just sort of piggybacking on Casey's thought that, this is a very unique block, and we wonder if there's other ways that you continue to look at celebrating that, the history and uniqueness of the block, specifically the historic theaters. There were originally design guidelines that were established by the state that sort of detailed how to do so. So we'd like to see if you can look at that and see ways that you can incorporate those ideas. And 2, we understand the uniqueness of the bollards. They're trying to be consistent with the rest of Times Square, but we do feel like it is a bit institutional, and we wonder if there are other ways to mitigate the sort of institutionalness and impressive nature of the security bollards. And so we want to see if you can explore other ways to do so. And that's it. Just wanted to make sure we relay those comments. And
thank you, Leroy. Go ahead, Casey.
Thank you. No, I'll just say, similar to what we said at CB4, I think we're happy to meet with you to discuss potential options and see if they can be incorporated as part of this project.
Great.
Anybody else from the public with a question or comment? No? Okay. Then we'll go to the committee business session. So we've been asked to provide a resolution in support, and we can talk about that generally. We have a model, a fresh model for the DDC Broadway project that we just sent. I guess we did a resolution, so we can look at that as a model. But I'll open it up if anybody has any comments on providing a letter or passing a resolution on this. No, okay.
Dave, can I just ask a question based on one of the commenters, public questioners?
Yep, sure.
So, I think woman's name was Miriam, asked both about ADA access for buses, and also about shelters. I think you said you're still looking into the shelter issue, but is there any question that buses would be ADA accessible? I would think in 2025, that's not a question, but a short thing.
Yeah, it's definitely ADA accessible, and actually at the bus stops where the spacing of the bollards is slightly wider to allow for easier access on and off buses. So that's definitely being considered.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have access to the resolution we did for?
I can pull it up.
I can hum a few tunes while we music on hold. Yeah.
I could translate. So David, you're proposing to use that reso as the model for this?
Yeah, because I think we had comments on separation of bike lanes and traffic lanes in that resolution. You know, I forget what else I don't remember the bus stop issue coming up, but we can pick that up.
Yeah, and could we add to, just based on what Miriam Faber said there about the bus shelters, you know, protecting people from the weather and benches for disabled people? Because the buses themselves are kneeling buses, it's the shelters.
Yeah, and I think in the renderings, I think they showed some other street furniture on that.
Yeah, so this was the resolution. I know it's a little bit hard to read, but the whereas clauses are mostly context, just what the project is aiming to do. Based on the presentation that we were given. And then a few comments about what we talked about, so concerns about speed, etc. And then two resolved clauses about general support and then asking for better demarcation of the plaza, etc. So we could do something similar where we have a bunch of whereas clauses outlining the project at a high level, and then in the resolves, we can put some specific, well, assuming we want to support it, we can have one that says we support it, and then also maybe some additional requests that we have for the project, if we want to add what we talked about, making sure it's ADA compliant and all that type of stuff.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I did have a question, or just is about the setting off like a security envelope with the bollards. Obviously, this is one of the busiest streets, but basically every sidewalk in the area is busy, and it seems like it if someone, I guess the intention is to prevent someone from doing something like we saw in New Orleans a few weeks ago, but there's lots and lots of opportunities again because all the sidewalks are busy. So I do wonder what the ultimate benefit is, and why we're what the trade-offs are between making the complete envelope and breaking up the sidewalk, given that there's always going to be, we're probably not going to encase all sidewalks in bollards.
I think,
maybe we will.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the standard applies to a broader area, and as new projects come up, this bollard design is installed in those areas. I don't know if DDC or DOT wants to comment on that, but we've seen it in other applications on other side streets. It's a requirement whenever
see it right
sidewalks
here,
are rebuilt.
Yeah, and I know near Penn Station, so.
Right, but it's pretty broadly around Times Square.
The capital project is to make permanent a security measure that is currently being met by the temporary concrete blocks that outline the sidewalk. So this project was funded in order to make that a permanent security measure.
Yeah, I mean, do you happen to know kind of what the area is where future projects would have to provide these bollards? Is it just everywhere along 42nd? Is it up 7th to a particular point? Do you know what that area is?
I can maybe provide a little bit of context for that question. I think that really does fall to NYPD counterterrorism. We take their recommendations into consideration for all of our projects. So it's not like there's fully defined areas for the entire city. There are identified locations that are high priority targets for these types of incidents. But there are also other considerations where, depending on the type of surrounding land use, the amount of gathering that could be potentially happening. So a lot of DOT's plaza projects do trigger the need for protective bollard secure zones. So it's both at the guidance of NYPD counterterrorism and at the kind of a land use surrounding context level, these sites are identified. But there's not like a requirement that every sidewalk as it's reconstructed needs bollards. That's definitely not something we're doing at a citywide level.
And it's a mix of bollards and these security planters that you showed us?
Typically it's a preference for bollards for permeability for pedestrians. We then look to kind of break up the bollards so it doesn't look like it's a continuous line of bollards, especially on a really long corridor like 42nd Street. So then we look to do other enhancements that can either break up the bollard line, provide seating, do other things. But we also have to take into consideration the context of the existing site. So 42nd Street has a super high pedestrian volume and congestion needs. So we didn't want to break up the bollards with large planting areas. So that's why they're relatively small and infrequently spaced. On other projects, we do large planting areas and seating elements to break up the bollards, but that wasn't really an option here due to the pedestrian volumes.
Okay.
Could I give some background to that question about why 42nd Street? I'm Tom Harris with the Times Square Alliance. When we did the bollards within the pedestrian plazas, we raised the issue about why are we protecting the plazas and not the sidewalks? I think it was 2017, there was that the vehicle accident where one person was killed, 24 people were seriously injured, and they put the bollards on 7th Avenue. When we looked at our pedestrian counts, we actually had higher pedestrian counts on 42nd Street and sort of said, why are we protecting 7th Avenue and not 42nd Street when there's more of an opportunity for pedestrians to gather for theaters and for other things on that block? Counterterrorism agreed, which was why the temporary measures were put in, and that's sort of how we got to this spot.
Okay, thanks. James, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. And actually, I wanted to kind of second part of what Tom just said, that I would normally have in the past sided with Neil, that I used to be very against bollards in general, but the reality is they're kind of necessary, and I think we need to defer to NYPD and counterterrorism on that aspect. I only have a limited amount of time, so I just wanted to comment on the broader proposal very briefly, which is, I think it's great. I just have an issue with any form of dedicated bike lane moving forward. And I think that without radical changes in enforcement, registration, and the way that our city handles kind of e-bikes and other forms of micromobility that are kind of just rampant and out of control, until then, I am just blanket against any type of use, like 100% use or control of space that is something that is like fundamentally like ageist, ableist, and is used by a very small percentage of the population. So that is my only comment on the proposal, and we'll see how the committee feels.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I would like to make a comment about
and since this bollard issue is coming up, I mean, they could just remove the traffic and we wouldn't need the bollards. So like, there, I mean, it just should be said that at least some people don't want any cars on the street whatsoever. And then we wouldn't have to worry about bollards and bicycles would have a lot more, you know, safety, et cetera. So, I just think it should be voiced that we don't need the cars there.
And also, just for the record, think the bollards are a good idea. Just, and maybe we should have bollards everywhere because these things happen through intentionally or through bad driving all over the city. So.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, further to that point, I know this committee has had frequent disagreements in the past about bike lanes and bikes, but I think we are almost universally agreed that we'd like to ensure pedestrian safety. And as Neil noted, the bollards will achieve that goal. So I think we should come to a consensus on it.
Yeah, just to be clear, there are no bike lane proposals in the project that we are talking about. We talked about some existing bike lanes, but there were no discussion of new bike lanes, so we shouldn't
Correct.
even be talking bike lanes on.
On the avenues, yeah.
I do think that bollards are a really terrible, halfway measure when it comes to like separating traffic and pedestrians. I mean, it's just something that we should aim to not have. I mean, again, it would be better if, you know, we had trillions of dollars to sink the cars into the ground or put them, you know, in some other interest. Well, I mean, I don't know. I just got back from Japan and I'm reeling from the culture shock. So the traffic and the traffic lanes and the pedestrian lanes are really well separated there. And you know, as far as separating traffic from pedestrians, bollards are fine, but they're kind of a halfway measure.
It's really not separating the traffic, it's the security measure.
Yeah.
And I agree, let's put all the cars into the oyster bed.
Neil, how would you feel about being the author of this resolution?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, all right, so let's.
And just a question, do we also want to mention the 42nd Street, the letter about 42nd Street, and say that we want it to, the design of this to also align with that?
Yeah.
With the vision for all of 42nd Street.
Whatever happens on the rest of 42nd Street.
What Leroy Lee said from New 42.
Yeah, I think he was, generally, you know, in support of the, but I can listen to that.
Okay, all right, so the proposal is for us to pass a resolution. Take it to the board on February 13th. And the resolution would mirror the one that we did for the Broadway Park. You know, obviously adjusted for the specifics of this proposal and the issues that were raised by New 42 and the bus stop question.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
So the bike lane.
Yeah, because it's not.
There is no bike lane issue here. Okay. That sounds good.
It was just the bus shelters and the 42nd Street and the new 42.
And benches of leaners or something.
Yeah.
Okay. We will take it to a vote.
Pull it up. All right, Dalal,
Yes.
Roland,
Yes.
Nazaro,
Yes.
David Sigmund.
Yes.
Is Southworth still on? It looks like he is
Yeah, he's
on.
there.
Did he get approval to vote?
Yes.
ahead? No, it's absent. Nancy,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Smears, yes. Tiffany? Looks like you're setting up your audio. I'll come back to you. Tristan, are you here? Tristan is gone, it looks like. I don't see his name. Let me make sure. Yeah, and his phone number's gone too. Zool,
Yes.
George? Is that a yes or a no? Sorry, you're muted, so we don't know what you're saying. I'll come back to you. Joel?
Yes.
All right, let me go back to Tiffany.
Yes, sorry about that.
No worries. And then Tristan still absent. And then George, how do you vote on this item? You can also give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if that's easier while you're fixing your audio.
You may not be able to hear.
Oh, yes. Can you hear us? Maybe you could type your vote in the chat. Why don't we just leave this vote open for now, and then we can come back to it at the end. It's gonna pass because we have more than enough
Okay,
votes.
thanks very much for the presentation, and this will be on, as I said, the February 13th agenda.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So next up is the DOT and MTA on the 34th Street Enhanced Bus Priority Project.
Great. Thank you, David. And good evening, everyone. As everyone turns on their cameras, thank you for having us for 2 agenda items today. I'm Jennifer Santa Ynez. I'm the Manhattan Deputy Borough Commissioner at the New York City Department of Transportation. I'm joined today by a couple of colleagues, Rachel Eisenberg and Philip Bethel from our Transit Development team, who will run through tonight's presentation with our colleagues from the MTA. And Jackie Lazaro, Borough Planner from my office, is also joining tonight while Colleen Chattergoon has some scheduled and well-deserved vacation. So we're here today, just to start our conversation and discussions with Community Boards 4, 5, and 6. So we're here tonight with you all in District 5 about the existing conditions along 34th Street. We're looking at the corridor river to river and hoping to develop plans and a proposal for potential bus priority and pedestrian safety enhancements. But just to be clear, tonight we're not coming with a proposal for you to review and discuss. We're bringing to you what we see on the ground, and we're soliciting feedback from you all as well as the attendees of the meeting to share with us problematic areas of concern, and to help us gather further input so we can develop those plans. I mentioned that we're speaking to all of the boards across town. We went to CB4's Transportation Planning Committee last week, and we'll be at CB6 Transportation Committee at the beginning of February. But yeah, we're all very excited to have this discussion with you here today in hopes of returning to the board in a couple of months to share our developed proposal. So with that, I'll hand it on to Rachel, who will screen share and run through our presentation.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm going to pull up my screen. All right, does everyone see the presentation?
Yep.
Yes, title slides up.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. My name is Rachel Eisenberg. I am a project manager in DOT's Transit Development Group. Today, I'll be joined in this presentation by Rob Thompson from the MTA. And we also have Mariah Richardson on from the MTA. We'll be talking about 34th Street and going over some existing conditions. All right, so to start out with, we'll go over some background, move on to existing conditions, talk about some of our work to date, move on to our toolkit, and then we'll talk about next steps. So starting out, our entire study area extends from river to river, as Jennifer mentioned. Of course, CB5, smack in the middle of that. And so why are we looking at 34th Street? So of course, 34th Street is a critical crosstown corridor with 28,000 daily bus passengers on M34 and M34A SBS, express buses, numerous subway connections, path connections, New Jersey Transit, Long Island Railroad, north and southbound local and express bus routes, It's an important truck corridor. And of course, 34th Street's located within the congestion relief zone. And with the recent launch of congestion pricing, this makes it, especially, on everyone's minds. With all that being said, we have weekday bus speeds that are pretty slow, about 4.6 miles per hour on average. So that's kind of why we're looking at this today, or not, that's why we're studying this right now and why we're presenting this today. So just a little more on the background. So 34th Street was included in the most recent update to the streets plan, which is New York City's 5-year transportation master plan. It was 34th Street was also identified in the May 2024 Connecting to the Core report, which identified projects that were within the congestion relief zone that, have the opportunity to make sustainable travel easier, safer, and more reliable within the congestion relief zone, or south of 60th Street. So now I'll move on to our existing conditions. So as probably most of you know, there is existing bus priority on 34th Street. In 2008, curbside bus lanes were first introduced on 34th Street. In November of 2011, with the launch of select bus service on the M34 and M34A, we upgraded many of the existing curbside bus lanes to offset lanes. We added 11 bus bulbs, which allow for faster boarding and an improved pedestrian experience. And probably, as many of you know, some of that work is still underway on 34th Street. So just going over some of those curbside and offset lanes. So, throughout 34th Street, there is a mix of curbside and offset. As you can see here, in the eastbound direction, so on that north sidewalk, we have curbside bus lanes. Oh, sorry, wrong way, westbound direction. We have those curbside bus lanes where the bus lane is running right along the curb. And currently those curbside lanes are in effect only weekdays between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. In the opposite direction here, running along the south side of the road, we have offset lanes, which are separated from the curb by, a parking lane, other loading space, other uses. Where there are bus bulbs, those extend to meet the offset bus lane, and where we don't have bus bulbs, the bus pulls into the bus stop. Those offset lanes are in effect 24/7. So, during the peak hour when all of the bus lanes are in effect, the bus can travel through the bus lane. But when we're talking about weekends or the early morning or the evening, on weekdays, the bus kind of has to move in and out of those bus lanes, which can cause some driver confusion and also some, difficulty merging. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rob Thompson to talk about bus speeds.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, so this map illustrates the bus speeds on 34th Street, both eastbound and westbound. The darker colors are slower, lighter colors are faster, and as you can see, some areas go down to as low as 3 to 4 miles per hour. And we do have some particularly slow speeds, especially in the curbside segments where it's not just on the weekends or overnight when the bus can't use it, but a curbside bus line very often can be blocked, even when it's legally in operation, because the anyone can stop and park, or for whatever reason, sometimes even legally, a taxi might stop, drop someone off or pick someone up. So on an average weekday, the roadway congestion is causing over 750 hours of passenger delay on the M34 and 34A. We measured that by comparing bus speeds in the overnight period when there's obviously almost no congestion to the daytime hours. and imagining how much time people would save if they were riding the buses at that overnight level of traffic. And another comparison is that versus the 14th Street busway where the M14 runs, those routes are 15% faster than the speeds that we see on 34th Street. So it's really a big difference what you can have on a similar street. It also has SBS, but there's a much higher level of bus priority on 14th Street. All right, I guess Rachel, if you want to continue.
Thanks so much, Rob. So now we'll move on to talking about safety. So, of course, 34th Street is an important bus corridor. It's also an incredibly important pedestrian corridor. And 34th Street is a Vision Zero priority corridor with 4 Vision Zero priority intersections, 2 of those within CB5. There's pedestrians, motor vehicles, cyclists crossing the intersections. So lots and lots of people trying to get where they need to go. Over the past 4-year period between 2019 and 2023, there were over 450 injured in crashes on 34th Street. And while this represents a 16% decrease over the previous 4-year period, from 2015 to 2019, that's still over 7 injuries a month. So, we know this is something that we want to see how we can make improvements for, because obviously we want that down to 0. So moving on to our visions and challenges. So we want to make bus service faster and more reliable. We want to improve the pedestrian experience and increase safety on the corridor. We also know businesses, there's tons of businesses along 34th Street, and we want to ensure access to those businesses. Challenges include vehicle access needs, the tunnels at either end of the corridor or access to them at either end of 34th Street, and high demand from all travel modes. So now I'll talk a little bit about the work that we've done to date. So in the fall, this past fall, we administered pedestrian intercept surveys along 34th Street. So our on-street outreach team talked to over 350 people on the sidewalks and administered about 200 on-street surveys. So participants talked about slow bus speeds and blocked bus lanes, also talked about the construction in the area and long crossing distances. Of those we surveyed, 71 reported walking along 34th Street and 39 reported taking transit to 34th Street. So understanding, obviously this doesn't add up to 100% because oftentimes transit trips are multimodal. So using multiple different forms, combination of both transit and walking was common. We also talked to all of the business, or we visited every business on 34th Street between 9th Avenue and 2nd Avenue. Over 100 businesses participated in our surveys, which asked about delivery schedules, challenges and needs the businesses might have relating to the roadway, deliveries, everything like that. Many of the businesses on 34th Street have access to building loading docks that are, on side streets. Others rely on side street parking and hand carts. In general, businesses noted a need for additional loading space on and around the corridor. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our toolkit. So obviously 34th Street does have existing bus priorities. So many of these, you can see along 34th Street. So the curbside and offset bus lanes that we talked about earlier, we have existing on 34th Street. We have existing bus bulbs. Again, that's where the sidewalk extends and the bus can stay in its offset lane to stop and load and unload passengers. Bus shelters, benches and leaning bars, and of course, parking meters, which help with vehicle turnover to keep the curb clear, keep people, able to access the businesses and whatnot around the corridor. Our bus priority toolkit includes some other things as well that are not currently in use on 34th Street. Of course, there are busways, the nearest example being 14th Street, obviously, where there's, limited access. Vehicles that are not buses or trucks are required to turn off at the nearest available turn. We also have bus queue jump signals as a part of our toolkit. Those are bus only signals that kind of let the bus cut the line, basically. So, before general traffic has a green light, the bus gets a green light, essentially. We also have physical protection. So vertical delineators are shown here, as well as center running bus lanes as a part of our bus priority toolkit. We also look at pedestrian safety and curb management improvements when we're looking at bus priority enhancements. So of course, pedestrian islands and curb extensions, whether in concrete or paint, are a part of our toolkit. And then we also know that parking and curb management is such an important part of, reducing double parking, allowing business access and, vehicle access to the curb. So truck loading zones and short-term parking are also in our toolkit. So now I'll move on to our next steps. So obviously right now we're meeting with community boards to discuss our existing conditions, and we're hoping that your feedback helps shape our draft proposal. Simultaneously, we're working on data collection and doing site visits, learning more about the corridor. Throughout this winter, we hope to continue public outreach, start conducting our traffic analysis, and develop and share a draft plan with you all. In the spring, we hope to share a refined plan with the goal of implementation in the summer of 2025, so this summer. And that is all I have, so thank you so much. If anyone has questions or comments, any feedback, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, 3 questions. Starting with maybe the hardest one. It looks like on 14th Street, you're getting much higher bus speeds. Is the plan at this point to sort of model that on 34th Street, which you've done on 14th?
Oh, sorry, I thought I was muted. I was trying to find the screen. As I said, right now, we're kind of gathering feedback. A busway is certainly something that we are, looking at as an option, since, it has had really positive benefits on 14th Street. So, yeah.
And then secondly, it looks like there's a really very high number of injuries involving vehicles. Is this running traffic lights? Is this speeding down the roadway? Have an idea of what this is? I mean, can there be something like rumble strips in the car travel lanes?
Thank you so much for that question. And while I have not dug deep into the safety data, the specifics of those many crashes and injuries at this point, we know that conflict between cars and pedestrians is, frequent throughout the city, with such a high volume of both cars and pedestrians along 34th Street. It's kind of, that makes it all more challenging. We have many different treatments that we do use to try and improve pedestrian safety. So ones that we're hoping to employ, as a part of our toolkit. So shortening crossing distances helps, right? If you have those smaller distances, especially for people who might be slower to cross the street, a light doesn't turn green, while they're still crossing. But that's something that we're going to look into.
And Rachel, if I may add, if there are specific locations that the board or, you know, the public would like to suggest to us for further investigation, we'll take that feedback as well.
Right, and so in that toolkit, are you also talking about, traffic calming devices?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we'll be taking a look at as well. As we know, turns are oftentimes the most dangerous aspect of an intersection, especially with the pedestrian conflict. So yes, turn calming will be looked at as well while we work to develop a proposal.
And then just last question with the bus shelters, they'll help in a light rain, but not much more than that. So wondering if there could be an improvement there. And then I see they have the benches, the leaners. Is there also room under the shelters to accommodate a wheelchair?
I believe there is room under the benches to accommodate a wheelchair. I believe that's part of the existing specs that are included. In terms of the weatherproofness, that's definitely a comment that I'll bring back. May not be incorporated, into this project, but certainly it's good to hear that feedback. And hopefully we can always continue to make improvements.
Thank you.
I was just curious, in the pedestrian intercept survey, maybe if you happen to have it at hand, what percentage of people drove? I know you said 39 said they walked and 71 took some transit.
I apologize. I don't have that in front of me, but we can certainly get back to you on that.
Great. And it seems like are there parts, I guess, within the central part, like CB5, that I'm looking at Google Street Maps. It looks like there are some places that there's on-street parking that doesn't have meters. I'm just making sure I'm not missing something, if you know where there are or aren't meters, and would either adding meters or removing those really available parking spaces be part of the plan or part of what you're considering?
Yeah, so we're definitely going to take a look at the existing curb regulations along 34th Street. We know that oftentimes adding additional metering can help with turnover. So to allow for as many people to access, 34th Street by car as, we don't want cars circling for parking, everything like that. We also have other parking or curb access tools in our toolkit. So short-term parking, like 15-minute parking, truck loading zones, neighborhood loading zones, everything like that. So we're going to be looking at those for along 34th Street. And we also know that, loading needs are large for the side streets as well, especially where 34th Street is more narrow. And so we'll be taking a look at all of that.
The fact that you have such an expedited schedule, does that kind of imply this is all going to be done with like paint and signs? Are there, capital improvements like additional bulbs or anything else that you think are part of the toolkit, but that might take longer than that? Or what does it all imply?
Yeah, David, thanks for that question, and the team can add on more. But ultimately, we're moving in our SIP timeline, right? So our street improvement project timeline, which is all in interim temporary materials. So you'll see the paint, what we can implement quickly. We're coming to the board, on a number of occasions, including this existing condition study, as well as the draft proposal that we'll bring back in a couple of months, with the intention not to make it feel like we're moving too quickly and that we're implementing this without getting the board's feedback. But yeah, we are moving in our interim treatment timeline here. And that doesn't preclude, of course, capital changes in the future.
Okay. And we've had conversations with CV4 and CV6 since you're presenting to each of us. essentially the same information. We were looking at doing maybe a common resolution. And the only real question I had, particularly when I look at the, I guess it's this page 9 where you see there's some offset lanes, some curbside lanes. Do you think the profile of the issue changes dramatically between, CB4's border on 8th Avenue and our border with 6 on Lex? Is the story different, or is there, no particular reason why the three of us couldn't agree on language and respond to you, with one voice?
I think we see a lot of similarities between the CBs 4, 5, and 6 along 34th Street, particularly towards the center, when you get to those very ends of, the west end of CB4, the east end of CB6, the land use is slightly different. But yeah, and in general, like the variety between or the variation between curbside and offset lanes is oftentimes driven in the existing condition was likely driven due to geometry. The street is only so wide, so there wasn't necessarily room for, offset lanes across the corridor, or, maybe we wanted to preserve some parking needs or loading needs on some blocks where it was determined that they were, necessary throughout the weekday peak periods. But I think in general, we're kind of looking at this more holistically across the CBs.
Okay. Great. So we will see what other input we can compile, and we'll see you in the spring.
Thank you, David. And you know where to find us. Colleen is back from vacation next week, but you can contact us at any time.
If any members of the public that wanted to make comments before you run.
If you have a comment you'd like to make, please raise your hand. No one raised their hand.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
thanks.
someone raised their hand. You got one.
Neil,
Nancy?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I live in Murray Hill, which is just north of 34th Street on the east side. And 34th is a very important street for both walking and taking the bus. My first thought is that it would not be good to turn it into a bus-only street like 14th Street, because there are many surrounding streets that don't go through from river to river around 34th Street. For example, 33rd Street has a barricade at Park Avenue near the Park Avenue Tunnel entrance. And there are other examples like that across 33rd and other streets. There's a hospitals over on the east side that kind of block, there are buildings that block some of the streets from being through streets. I just think it would create some snarls in the traffic, but I haven't seen the full plan, so I'm a bit open-minded about it if I could be convinced otherwise, but my first impression is that it would not be a good idea to force cars off of 34th Street. We need some clear through streets from river to river.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your feedback. And just to reiterate, we're here to listen, to get, that important neighborhood feedback from you all. So thank you so much.
And I will also mention for this project, because of the importance here in 34th Street, we are actually we are planning to do more traffic analysis than we normally would do, and at a higher level that would allow us to look at diversions depending on what type of work we would do. So we'll definitely take that into account.
Okay, James, did you put your hand up?
Yes, I did. I just had one comment or question that's it's not necessarily specific to this exact proposal with 34th Street, but it could be depending on how it's implemented. in a situation like on kind of like Broadway South, when you're headed toward Canal, you have two lanes, you have parking lanes on both sides of the street, and then you have a bus lane, and then you have one traffic lane. And oftentimes people double park in that traffic lane on the left side of the street, creating a situation where there's basically nowhere for anybody to go. And people often don't want to even go into the bus lane momentarily for fear of being ticketed by a red light camera or a bus lane camera, et cetera. So just whenever I see proposals like this about creating through streets that are hopefully to make things faster for buses and public transportation and ease things overall, I want to make sure that this is being thought about and looked at, because in a situation like that, it's kind of, it like verges on like Kafkaesque absurdity. And like, I don't have a problem with just getting rid of the parking lanes. But if we create a situation where traffic can't move because of 24-hour video enforced bus lanes, that's not exactly helpful either. Could any of you either comment on that, or is this just a comment that I should leave to the committee? David, feel free to
No, I mean, if
do whatever you
if
want
have
with it.
Answer to that, then sure.
Thank you so much for that comment. I think as Phil mentioned earlier, you know, our traffic analysis will be looking at this, you know, not just along 34th Street, but kind of the whole area, looking at making sure that traffic can flow through, you know, on a more network level. Obviously, what you're talking about specifically in this question is a lot more specific to the block. Right now, we don't have a, you know, exact proposal that we're presenting. We're just talking about existing conditions, and that's definitely, you know, that, I guess, bottlenecking effect or kind of roadblock effect will be something that we hopefully can take a look at. Obviously understand that frustration and yeah.
Neil, did you have a?
Yeah, is now a good time for comments or just general?
Yeah, because we're gonna close this out.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just sort of crazy that there's general use parking, especially unmetered, but even metered. Like, it's not the type of place that you like pull over and run out and like grab something for half an hour. It's 34th Street. And I can imagine that also causes a lot of the accidents as people cross over bus lanes, reduces pedestrian visibility. And it seems like there's a need for more loading. I think we should really dedicate as much as either get rid of the parking lanes or really make sure that it's being used for the highest, you know, for the most important thing, which is like either loading or drop off or pick off, drop off and pick up. So I think as much as we can, I would be totally okay with trying to shift away from just general use parking to more.
Are you suggesting that they consider eliminating street parking?
I mean, I think if they can make it into more dedicated loading space and drop off or pick off, or really short-term things, because there are garages in the area if people need to park, and especially there shouldn't be free parking on 34th Street. It seems a little bit weird to me.
Anything else to do a resolution on?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, my office
So that's
is
just
one
my
pen,
personal
and you
comment.
know, who parks there is the MTA police.
Yeah, and I see that's,
So I guess that there needs to be some parking, but
well, they can get a, you know, we can say
yeah.
special spot.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you all for having us. We'll look forward to continuing our conversation.
Great. Great.
Thanks all. Good night.
Yeah. So I wanted to, I don't know if people, I mean, I have a couple of copies, but our team topic list, I wanted to go through it, and see, Samir and I have had some conversations with some of the electeds about what they'd like to see us, kind of move forward with. I don't know if people have comments on the topics or how the teams are structured, or if people want to move around because they don't like the topic that they're assigned to. Whatever people want to talk about, we can talk about. So I don't know if I have a few copies if people want paper.
I'll take a piece of paper.
So just stepping through it, right now we have the mobility team, which is Joel and Tiffany. And that has focused on, you can see the subtopics. There was some movement on delivery app safety and bike lane safety. The latest thing that came up was this question about e-bike registration. And not much has really moved on that, but so the whole question of e-mobility. There was
Want us to talk about them or just?
Yeah, I mean, it's you and Tiffany, so feel free to jump in. And if
So that first one, the bike lane safety and the registration issue, it's not I think it said in here something about a licensing issue. It's really not licensing, it's just registration. There are two intros right now, one at the state level, which would require only delivery bikes to be registered and have some kind of visible identification on them. Personally, I don't think it's a very smart thing to do, because you're now tasking enforcement people with figuring out who are the deliveristas and how are they going to do that without profiling. I just think it's a kind of off the wall proposal. I know it's Hoyleman's, Hoyleman Siegel's Mandarin table. His response to the registration issue. The actual registration issue is in a separate intro at the city council. It still has majority support among city council members. As of today, there were 28 members who were signed on to it, but they can't bring it to a vote because Speaker Adams won't allow it to come to a vote. You need 34 to override her. So that's where those two are. I think some of the at least one council member whom I've spoken with has said that there's Gail Brewer. She said she would support the city council registration bill if it were introduced at the state level. She just thinks it's a state issue. The state actually gave the city authority to do this when they legalized e-bikes and passed that whole e-bike moped registration legalization bill back in 2018, 2019. So the city could do it. She doesn't want to do it. So that would bring it up to 29. I don't know if there are
Being a speaker.
She being Gail Brewer.
Okay.
Yeah, she would support it if it were at the state level, but for some reason that I really trouble understanding, she won't support it at the city level.
And any understanding of why the speaker doesn't want to bring it to the floor?
She's against it. Yeah, for all the reasons other people have said that they're against it, no.
So most likely, I mean, this whole issue isn't really going to come to the committee anytime soon. I mean, we have not, this is not one where somebody is asking us to act on it. Usually it was a reaction to the fact that there were intros. And so, we felt like we, might need to take a position, but so far we haven't really seen any movement at all.
Technically, we could, the state bill is, the city bill is probably not going to move anywhere. I think Botcher signed on. I know Powers had signed on and then he signed off. Or I'm sorry, he was signed on to the city bill when it was in the previous session of the council. The new session of council had to reintroduce the bill and he hasn't signed on yet. And Gail Brewer wasn't signed on to either of them. We have a fourth council member, Rivera. I don't think she's been on either one.
Okay.
So we could, if we want to support the city bill, we could, have a resolution go to the three members who have not signed on. And we know Gail's not going to do it, but the other two, I don't know why Powers didn't sign on yet, why Rivera didn't sign on.
Is it going anywhere with the state? Does that seem like a possibility?
I think the Botcher bill, I'm sorry, the Hoyleman Siegel bill is like what's out there right now. I don't think there's any bigger proposal to license No, the only registration bill that I know of for this kind of thing was the one that requires stores selling mopeds not to let them out of the shop without a registration or evidence of a registration. That already passed. There's still a ton of mopeds on the street without them, but that's an enforcement issue.
Is your sense that we need to pass the state before we can move in the city?
On the registration issue, the moped registration? No, that's already law.
It is, so.
Yeah, moped, right. Mopeds have always been required to be registered. Right. But mopeds, you were able to buy them, just like you can buy a Segway, which is illegal anywhere on the street, but you can buy a Segway, you can buy a moped until late last year without having plates and take it out of the shop and go ride it down the street. Now, the shop is not supposed to let you out of the shop for that.
So does everything now come down to enforcement then?
Well, for mopeds, it's always been about enforcement.
And for e-bike?
For e-bikes, there's no registration requirement. Right. And the purpose of the registration requirement is to make enforcement feasible. Which is not currently.
Okay, so
that's where those stand. I think you're right, David. There's nothing for us to do right now.
So the micro mobility, this device battery swapping station, I guess there was a pilot. You know, again, this is one where, you know, it came up that there was this pilot. Was this something we wanted to take a position on? But nothing else has really happened on it that I'm aware of. And the city seems to be moving forward with this swapping program. So.
Yeah, I didn't find anything further. I think James wanted to say something. I don't know if that is the last one.
James?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that the actual mode in which the bill currently is right now is it can be moved forward very rapidly, kind of at any time. I know we're not in a position to do this today, but I would encourage the committee I think we should take a stance on this. I think we should support it. I think sort of any wheeled vehicle that's going to be on the roads in any way needs to be registered and needs to be licensed. So I would encourage us, if we don't consider it further today, to at least prepare for discussion and consider voting on a resolution at the next meeting, because it could be moved forward. I understand the comment that it's not likely to be, but perhaps we could use our advisory influence to help it further along, because to me, this is it's a very, very serious issue. And because the biggest problem is enforcement, this is a way to make enforcement easy. So I think we should push for it.
Yeah,
that's it.
We're not going to do that now. So, you know, look, part of the reason why we didn't push it forward is I think the committee is really very, very divided on this. So we could have a discussion and we could split, and then we could do nothing. So unless the nature of the discussion changes, which the only way I really see that happening is if a bill shows up that makes some sense, then maybe we would be able to come together and take a position. Otherwise, I'm expecting this to be a, you know, 8-7 kind of vote, and we're not going to accomplish anything. So my guess is we're probably better off keeping an eye on it, seeing if anything really is moving. We stay in touch with our electeds, you know, to keep track of these things. And if something seems to be reaching consensus, then I think it would be helpful for us to see something more concrete and not have a general discussion on this topic.
I will need to add, however, that we have done the exact opposite on very pressing issues like City of Yes housing opportunity. And so I don't think we are really in a position to be relying on consensus anymore.
Yeah, but I don't know. And that was a real piece of legislation that we had to respond to. So we're not there yet on, you know, e-bike registration.
We're in the kicking the can down the road mode.
Yeah, I think that's what we are. So the micro mobility, this battery swap thing, I don't think there's anything for us to do on that. Tiffany, I know you were tracking micro hubs. Tiffany still on?
Yeah, I'm here. I haven't heard anything back from DOT at all since I think like November. So I'll try to reach out to Colleen, I think it is, see if I can get some info for the next meeting, but we haven't had any feedback. I don't think the office has received any input on the community's input on any of this. So I don't know if we wanted to start thinking of some areas too that we think might be good and having that in our minds when we have another conversation with DOT, or we just kind of put that back on them to then
No,
talk to us.
The last time you presented this, the idea was if anybody, had any ideas of other locations that we should put it on the record. That's what they asked us to do.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the record has been open on this since you did your.
Exactly. And I haven't gotten anything, so I don't have anything to really report, but I will try to circle back with them and see if we can get some more info, because they did say that in the first quarter of this year is when they were probably thinking about having our district area starting with the pilot, but I'll have to circle back with that.
All right. $5 city bike, I put that in the same category as e-bike registration. I mean, first of all, they don't have their act together yet. There was no real consensus coming out of the two discussions that we did have. So if TA or whoever is coming back with more information on what it is they're proposing, then I think at that point we could take it up and see whether we wanted to support it. I don't know, beyond the one, whatever it was, CB3 or whoever who had passed something, I'm not aware of anybody else that has done that.
I think CB7.
Oh, really? Okay. So the other item that came up, which would be in cooperation with Parks and Public Space, is the Central Park Drives proposal. And Tiffany, I don't know, were you?
Yeah, I kind of skimmed. Yeah, I was looking, I was trying to read it. It's pretty long. I just wanted to get up to speed on it, and then I will, I know Joel was too, so we can both kind of, be on the same page with all this. And then I will reach out to Libby and see where Parks is with their contribution to this proposal.
Okay, I haven't spoken to her. I'm not sure how aware she is.
Okay.
But yeah, so, I mean, you could just reach out to her now and share the information and see what she says. We don't have to wait until.
Okay, okay.
Bless you.
Perfect. I'll talk to her soon.
Tiffany, I sent you some notes earlier today.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Got him. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was basically just about those.
Okay.
Is anybody aware of any other issues in this category that we should be tracking?
So there's a proposal in at the city council, it's intro 6060, which is to terminate the temporary plan, the interim plan allowing motorized vehicles in the parks, and to ban them permanently. That was just introduced. It has about 20 council members already in support, but it's just starting. And I think that's actually, I've heard a lot of people talking about those should be banned, that, e-bikes, e-scooters, other things that go, really fast should just not be in the parks. It doesn't apply to Riverside Park because that's not, I don't know, that's under some different jurisdiction. It's just New York City parks, in particular Central Park. I think we should talk about that.
Okay, and is it coming up in the? I don't
It's
remember.
not up for a vote yet, because
No, but I mean, it didn't come up in the Central Park proposal. They didn't take a position on that, did they?
They didn't, I didn't see anything in there, Tiffany, did you?
No.
I think they assume that e-bikes are still gonna be there because they talked about having a speed bike lane as opposed to a regular bike lane, as opposed to.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated. Different roads are going to have different speed abilities and different things that are different mobilities that are allowed, and then take away some that aren't allowed. And so
Is there any language in it that speaks to enforcement?
In the city council in turn? I don't.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're all over pretty on the pathway, doing everything every direction.
Well, yeah, that's kind of a general problem everywhere, you know, allocation of funding for enforcement, allowing enforcement.
Okay. So I'll add that, to the list. Anybody want to get off that, team? Anybody want to get onto that team?
Got a good team.
Okay.
We got a good team.
Wants to join us.
Go team.
So, you know, we haven't, the only real, on the environmental issues, the E, the only thing that's really been right in front of us was this, food truck diesel generator thing. I don't know that that's, has
I
that
don't think
gone
it's
anywhere?
been re-introed.
Yeah. So otherwise, the bus idling, I don't think we see anything on that.
I haven't seen anything
Yeah,
recently.
so I don't know if there's much activity, and I will tell you, we haven't really had much of a conversation yet, but. Other community boards combine environmental issues with parks and public spaces. So, you know, that may be something worth talking about as well, to get, you know, more people looking at some of these issues.
Just a quick comment on the generator. I'm seeing quite a turnover to electric generators.
Okay.
Except for the ice cream. They've taken a break.
Broadway, so let's talk
I
about.
will just comment one thing about what you just said about environment. I do think Libby has expressed interest in that. So, I mean, for further discussion, but.
Exactly. I mean, I'm only mentioning it because I actually, when I was walking to work, I saw, you know, a spot on one of the, link, screens that there was a meeting of the CB4, you know, Parks and Environment Committee. So that's what raised it. So we'll look on Broadway. I don't have a view yet on whether we should be forming a task force on this, and I think part of it is kind of related to what we talked about with DDC today and what we passed on Broadway. There is a concrete proposal that's been funded and that's going ahead for 38th to 40th streets. And, you know, this committee passed a resolution that supported it. So what is it that we're trying to accomplish then, as it relates to Broadway Linear Park or any other concept? And what would a task force do that's different than what the committee would do?
Yeah, well, I think it's really a multitude of committees here that would have involvement, because it begins to involve certainly parks and public spaces, but we're really talking about, you know, as DOT puts it, you know, a paradigm shift. And most of that is based on the kind of residential convergence that we're seeing. Part of that was because of the passage of City of the Est. And a lot of it is the increasing need for green space and the potential that, you know, really future focused Broadway could be. I mean, really thinking of it as a park with all kinds of features, with all kinds of support and activities from the various bids, you know, just given the various locations. So you're involved in the Union Square partnership, and so they have the green markets there. So just picture raised community garden beds, school students learning about botany, about raising food, composting, all that kind of stuff. Move up to Flatiron and Manhattan Conservancy right over there, and then look at all the various kinds of arts involvement that you can have there, interactive projects and the like. You go further up into Times Square and then think in terms of the theater and projects that you can do with the schools, with student theater and the like, going all the way up to Columbus Circle. And now I thought with Broadway Linear Park project, we're starting to really move the conversation in terms of truly protected bike lanes, real pedestrian safety, which has been a real concern of us. So that's moved Broadway vision a good bit further forward. But in some of the events that I've been going to and conversations and my discussions with this professor, John Shapiro, urban planning professor from Pratt, I mean, you can just move so much more forward in terms of, again, residential convergence, green space, adaptability. So we're really talking about going past, tables and chairs and boulders on concrete and asphalt, potted plans, and really thinking forward. And then Christopher and I have walked it and looked at a few different things, as I have with others. We are seeing express bike lanes in various places, elevated bike lanes, Sao Paulo is example, but other places. So just thinking of an express bike lane that would take the bikes entirely off Broadway, and they would be over the emergency lane, which obviously we have to keep for fire and whatever else, ambulance and so forth. But then think of so this would be express line down the spine of the city, and you would get on and off at the major intersections. These are just, thoughts, really thinking deeply into the future, because in these kinds of capital projects, a lot of these are 5, 10, 20 years away.
Yeah.
And so we finally get it done. And it's like, oh my God, this is already nothing. And then one of the things I heard from another professor who is the fellow responsible for that use of the permeable asphalt out in Queens, he's doing a lot of consulting with different groups. So I'm actually having coffee with James Meatham of Flatiron Nomad tomorrow. And I think if we can start getting the bids interested, and I think they are interested in just an overall visioning process, tremendous input from, all around, because there are all kinds of other things. They could be water features. I mean, it just could be just extraordinarily creative, and just, look how popular the High Line became. And it's essentially, it's a park, and it's an incredible tourist draw. But down the center here, this could give so much impetus to the theater districts, and do kinds of boutiques and things on Broadway. And we could really eventually figure out how these outdoor dining stuff works, and really turn it green.
Okay, I mean, my guess is based on what we approved for 38th to 40th Street that's been funded. And the issue, I guess, will come up in Midtown South. You may be more than 20 years away if that's the direction they're going in. So I just want, I don't want to, first of all, for you to be engaged with the bids, like the committee doesn't have a position on any of this stuff.
That's understood, yeah.
Other than the position we've already taken, which is that we supported the DDC project.
Right, and that's good, because this is gonna be a phase by phase. So let's get built what we can get built, and then if we can think further into the future and then improve upon that in the next phase, that's how it's gonna go. So.
All right, well, let's see, I guess, what the bids think. And
yeah,
I don't know where the funding would come from for the next generation, considering that they were only able to pay for 2 blocks of the current generation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right, the school streets thing, I would love it if we took control back on that, I guess.
Yeah, because that woman who was in touch with it kind of disappeared.
Well, they were prepared to deal with it on a very general level, but there's only 12 schools, I think, in our district. We don't have a lot of schools.
Yeah.
So maybe when the weather warms up, if you feel like taking a look and seeing like, do any of these jump out at us as locations that we should support with DOT, I'd like to try and move on that.
Okay. And I can get back to those folks, because I don't know why they just dropped out.
Well, because they were like, you pass a resolution that says you like school streets, and then we'll go take that and talk to schools, and we're like, there's only 12 schools.
Exactly, we wanted specific information.
Where this might work.
We wanted the maps and the contacts.
So, yeah, I mean, I would stay in touch with them, but.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Public elementary schools, is that all we're talking about?
No, I mean, I think any school is eligible to be private.
It could be private, or it could be high school. Yeah, and like, for example,
list of 12 schools.
Yeah, it's actually on the,
link there?
yeah, it's on the link.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I think the best example is between Park and Third. Is that right? Park and Lex got it on 21st Street.
Sorry, just really quickly. I don't know if this would go under mobility or pedestrian experience, or something else, but we also talked about ghost plates. I don't know where I want to slot that in. I don't think that's anywhere on here.
Yeah, we're, it's on a bottom list.
Oh, it's on the bottom.
Ghost car governance.
All right, great. And then, I think that the assembly member on the west side wants to come and talk about an open street on Broadway between 35th and 36th, I believe. So maybe that's something.
Oh, that was the Tony Simone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
What was there a description of what that would involve?
They want a permanent open street between 35th and 36th on Broadway.
And does that mean no traffic?
Correct.
Except for emergency?
Yes. I think so.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they had
That's great.
holiday market there, and they think that that holiday market, you know, the way that it diverted traffic, that should be made permanent. I think that holiday market lit on fire.
Yes.
Grease
fire or something.
So maybe not that.
35th and 36th?
I believe it was
Yeah.
that.
Do we have something on the website?
No. I think I had it on the tracking at some point, but yeah.
And this was Tony Simone?
Tony Simone, okay. Okay. So pedestrian experience, you know, what the discussion we had with the Manhattan Borough President's office was that they were interested in the sheds. There are, I think, 4 or 5 different pieces of legislation, but they expect those to start moving. So they asked us if we would engage on, you know, a resolution on sheds, which is pretty easy for us to do.
Okay.
We just kind of need to understand what the status is of the package and then
what does it mean to say shed? So you have to
You're
have a
gonna
shed when
tighten
you
up the
do it.
rules
Right.
for how long you can leave a shed up
And what if you can't solve your safety issue in whatever the amount of time?
And one of the proposals is that the city would do it for you and then bill you
Do the
the
repair?
facade repair.
So that's not always the issue.
Yeah, I mean, this
There's
is
a lot
what,
of reasons
we
to
don't
go
have
with
to
shed.
discuss this right now. I think
Okay.
that is like what that group can look into.
Okay, it's just how, okay.
Yeah.
Just a question for that, right now, can a restaurant have both a sidewalk cafe and a shed?
That's not what we're talking about.
Not that
scaffolding. No, this is
Talking about
the
scaffolding.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay,
Yeah,
thank you,
safety,
okay, good,
yeah.
good. Yeah, did that metal path, and so that's
No,
supposedly gonna.
No, got introduced in pieces. There was a sort of flurry of activity in the fall and now.
And there was a lot of
I
shed.
find it difficult to accept that the city would go faster than the building owners, frankly. It takes the city forever to do pretty much anything.
Yeah, but there are some, I think
Right.
this is in the extreme cases, like
Yeah.
there are sheds that have been up for decades.
Yeah, well,
So,
then we need to find what those, is there a way we can map those extreme cases?
Yeah,
It's
You
on
know,
the map
they
on the
know.
city website,
Yeah.
on DOB website.
So is that committee, looking at every specific shed that's been up for more than, say, 18 months?
Is who? No, that's not our issue. Our issue is just the legislation. So
No, but I mean, but in terms of the sheds in the pedestrian experience force here,
right.
do people have an idea of where these places are in our district?
No, and I mean, there is a map online, you can look it up. Really, the issue is that there's a package of bills out there. And somebody needs to kind of read them and
Okay.
decide whether this is something we should be supporting, and the borough president is backing it and has asked us to take a look.
Okay.
So the co-naming policy, I mean, I don't know that specific, you know, it came to us and so it reawakened the issue of whether we should, you know, take these back up again.
I would just like to say that in terms of co-naming, in the area this man is suggesting, it's not much of a problem. You get into the Broadway area, And we're gonna get 20, 30. I mean, we were inundated with it, and there are so many that then what happens is the street numbers get removed. And no one knows where they are, and that's the problem. You need to have those avenue and street signs. And there's so much, look around at the stuff that's already on those street poles. There's a lot there. And now, and then, so if you let this person, then the next year, oh, we need this, it's an enormous thing to manage and approve. The area they're talking about on 16th Street, probably not much of a problem, but we're Midtown and we have so many more locations where people would ask for that.
And to your point, you get these total renamings, one Manhattan, what's it, and you have no idea where.
Well, then you get like 3 or 4. And then them says, well, you did it for them, on now my cause, you know, and that's why we put a moratorium on it, because we were inundated, it was all we were talking about, and we weren't able to get on with the business. Other things that we're talking about right now, we will be consumed, just like we were consumed with the bus applications for which we had very little control over.
Right.
So as you point out, in a situation like this where, you know, it's gonna keep the street numbers and we're not gonna end up with something that you can't find on Google Maps.
That's that's renaming a street. I mean, that's.
But co-naming, what happens is sometimes people don't know.
Yeah.
So
And they use
we have an
that as an
enormous
address.
number of tourists.
Right.
Tourists aren't gonna know which is which. They don't, you know, you and I, we all know, oh yeah, the avenues go north and south, the streets go east and west, the evens go east, you know, we know all that, but tourists don't know that. And we want them to be able to find their way around.
Yeah, and it gets very.
And then the
complex with
street is
Google
only
Maps.
for one block,
Yeah.
and then in the next block, it changes to another name.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, we could also, again, we could pass another moratorium, which is fine. I just think that we should have a up-to-date opinion. instead
Then I
of a-
think we should consider passing another moratorium, because it is I just experienced it, and it was complex and difficult. And many people were coming before us to get this, and if that's what we want our time to be taken up with, then don't pass a moratorium. But if you want to, you know, if you want to be able to get to these other things,
Yeah,
I think
we
we
haven't
should
actually, I
consider it.
mean, in the 3 years I've been on the board, we haven't had a request until now, so,
because we have the
a
moratorium,
yeah.
because we have the moratorium, people.
Well, I
know.
guess it also helped that, you know, the city council person was basically saying, don't talk to me, talk to them.
Well, that's why it came to us, but
Yeah,
I think if you had gone to Marisa initially and she said we have a moratorium and that would be
Yeah,
the end of it,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I understood happened over the last, what do you say, 2003, the last 22
right,
years?
right, all right. Daylighting, you know, there is this Hoyleman, state senate bill. Right now, New York City is kind of exempted from the statewide policy, but his bill would require us to comply. And the topic is heating up. So, you know, in this case, did we already do resolution? Is
Yeah, we
that
did.
what? Right.
Yeah, we have
Passed one.
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
Right.
months ago,
Yeah.
a few months ago.
And does that overlap with the,
And Anker, I think, led that.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't
He's the
remember.
one- That was his.
We responded to a
on that.
specific request.
of Colleen?
Yeah, okay. Well, I think this is keeping track of whether this Hoyleman bill or anything else is moving forward, because I just think the topic is heating back up again.
And is there overlap there with the street vendors, particularly, you know, those units that end up on the sidewalk? So a lot of them, they're right at the intersections, they're right. at the
Very good
corners.
point.
They're often blocking the signage for the subway entrances. They spend a lot of money on those things and you just can't
Right.
see any of that. So is that included in the?
No, this is automobile parking, you know, in the street,
But in terms
within
of-
20 feet of crosswalk.
There's
but is
also a
that
whole
a-
bunch of,
But
sorry.
is that a transportation and environment committee issue that would be in this pedestrian experience arena?
I don't know, I think it ended up in the pedestrian experience arena because Ankur had worked on it and Ankur was in the
Yeah.
pedestrian experience.
Right.
group.
He was very excited.
So it
about
was
it.
for continuity.
Well, I
It's
know that when I
interesting
was on 34th Street bid, when I
They asked
represented,
for it.
they were very opposed to any kind of these food trucks. Because of the fumes from the generators, the signage was obtrusive, was not good. That they had the signage going all the time. The amount of garbage
Exactly.
that is accumulated
Yeah.
during that time, and also blocking the daylighting, the corners is a problem. And then in addition to that, those food vendors who actually have brick and mortar spaces, they're competing with them as well. So the businesses that are there are being hurt. So so they are very problematic.
It's interesting that DOT, which came to us and asked for the daylighting, I didn't remember that. But that's what you're telling me, that
No, it
DOT
was,
is now putting.
Carly
Yeah.
Rivera or somebody
Yeah.
came to us.
Oh,
and
to a
asked
council
us-
member.
Yeah.
Okay, well, DOT seemed to be not opposed to it at least, right?
I don't
I don't remember
I
them
don't.
speaking
Yeah, I
against
think
it,
it was
but in
an
any case,
internal
they're putting
discussion.
up planters in locations that are completely blocked. So if you're riding down a bike lane on 9th Avenue, the planters block the cars from seeing the person in the bike lane when the car is making a turn. It's just really bad.
Yeah, there's
They're-
an article that came out
News.
today, because they did a study and the study, reached odd conclusions about the safety of daylighting and should it be hardscaped? Or could it just be landscaped or, so, the whole topic is now open for discussion. But I'd say the answer for this is, let's just keep track of whether anything is happening on it. We'll pick it back up again.
So citywide, there is some amount of, a lot of discussion anyway about curbside planning. But is there anything, you brought up the issue of consistency with the bollards, is there any sort of group or agency that's thinking, the consistency with the daylighting, with these?
Yeah,
vendors,
well,
all this
DOT has sort of taken the opposite view, which is it ends up being more case by case. You can't just say blanket, push everything back 20 feet. They have different ways of answering it at different intersections, depending on traffic patterns and accident history, and is it near a school? So their answer is, they want to look at it intersection by intersection.
But because you've been looking at it for a long time, would it make sense to say, do this blanket thing, and if something needs to go in there, there be an application for that, instead of doing it the other way?
Yeah, I guess that's the debate. I mean, Hoboken did it blanket. They went in and pushed everything back 20 feet. And they've been, vision zero for a decade. So that's kind of where the push comes from, to just do it everywhere, but DOT is taking a different position.
Our Vision Zero has not been as successful as it needed to be.
Yeah.
Look both ways.
Can we take?
And how long have we had Vision Zero? For a number of years.
Yeah.
This came in with de Blasio.
Yeah, at the very beginning.
Yes,
Yeah.
and he had what, 2 terms?
Yeah.
8 years.
Yeah.
And then Adams is another 12 years.
Yeah.
We've had Vision Zero,
Yeah,
but we don't have zero.
no.
Yes, and then we'll move on.
I don't know, like, there can't be any other number there. It's not like, oh, we're gonna vision 25 now because,
Okay, but we've been going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Going into my-
In the beginning, it actually helped a lot in the beginning of de Blasio's first administration, like the rollout was really good.
Right.
But then by the end of the second administration, we were worse in terms of pedestrian
Yeah.
deaths than we were before he came.
There was a lot of
And guess what?
education. in the
It's
first
back to
two.
our age-old problem,
Yeah.
enforcement.
Enforcement was a big part of the.
It's enforcement.
Enforcement,
Lack of
planning,
enforcement.
follow through on all these agencies.
Oh, the plans are there. I believe it's
Yeah,
all
just like the
enforcement.
legislation is there, it's just no enforcement.
All right, let's, if we go to the bottom.
But just last
track
thing on
of-
that, can we take a position though on any of this? in terms
I
of-
feel like it needs to percolate a little
All right.
bit before we.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so topics, Park Avenue median redesign, so this is, this is the proposal that's moving forward to, it's a DOT project to rebuild the Park Avenue medians.
What parts of it?
I think it's like north of.
Between.
42nd Street?
It says Grand Central to 57.
That's already being done by the committee I'm on, which is the
East
law-
Midtown Governing Group? that one?
Yes, that's where that's already moving forward.
Okay, so the question is there anything for this committee to do or parks and public spaces?
There's
On this
nothing
thing.
below 34th on this?
No, they're moving forward with it.
Yeah, I
It's
thought all the way
already,
down to 14th.
No, this is.
This project is
yeah,
from
this is
Grand Central
North.
Okay, so that.
because it's part of reconstructing the train shed and the trains don't go south of 30.
yes,
42nd.
that's been going on for some time. That was actually came out of the rezoning that we worked on.
The East Midtown
So-
zone.
Yeah.
All right, so we
East
will,
Midtown Governing Group is what.
we'll hold this in abeyance. So
And
the
they
co-
have a website if you want to see what's going on. Go to the website,
Who's that?
the East Midtown Governing.
Oh, okay.
I can send you the link, I just don't have it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of letters.
East,
It's a mouthful.
East Midtown Public Realm Improvement Fund Governing Group.
Stop. Yes.
That's the name.
I think all right, so ghost cars. This is another one where we've been asked by the borough president's office to weigh in. I mean, quite frankly, it would be almost easy for us to do it because everybody's picking the issue up. MTA is picking the issue up. NYPD is picking the issue up finally. So, I mean, if we wanted to chime in on this and, do a solid for the borough president, could do that, I think, pretty easily.
Do we have language for it?
They plan to come and present their report on suggestions they would have in terms of legislation and enforcement at our February meeting, I think is when they plan to come.
Okay.
And then at that point, we could talk about it and maybe support some, not support some, support all of it. I think it should hopefully
Maybe we
not be
could
too
add on something
controversial.
about the licensing of the
Yeah.
vehicles, because it sort of fits, but it's
It
the
does.
next,
Yeah, not with this borough president,
what's that?
not with this borough president. But isn't this the law already? I mean, ghost cars are illegal, fake plates are illegal, not having a plate is illegal.
I thought that
Like, it's really, it seems like it should be an enforcement.
Ghost guns are
I think
illegal, we're
it's,
taking them off the street.
Yeah, it's predominantly enforcement. I mean, the easiest time to enforce it is when the car is parked. And, but now it's becoming an issue, obviously, for congestion tolling
Well,
and.
They can
Because
catch it when they go
total-
through congestion, they can
Yeah.
see it, when you go through the,
You just-
underneath the gantries, you can
Yeah, the
see.
problem is
Second
pulling them
Avenue.
over, right? It's
Yeah.
easier to ticket them or tow them
Right, so-
if it's on the.
No, the police confiscated a whole bunch, or ticketed, I'm sorry, a whole bunch of cars on Second Avenue.
Yeah.
The first week of congestion pricing.
Yeah.
They
They
found
continue
they
to
found
do
it in
that.
religion.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's, the issue is that it needs to be a building and maintained, effort in
It
order.
would be a great place to actually have, enforcement located at those gantries or right or 2 blocks after it, as it goes through, it picks it up, they catch them 2 or 3 blocks down.
Right.
or on the GW.
But I think you put your finger on it, I mean, how much of a priority is it for that elected?
Once and stuff is.
Well, no, it's like key to congestion pricing.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody's
we
getting
need-
in free.
We need the income.
Is-
MTA needs the income.
Yeah.
Is it at least a category on 311? Cause like, that would be,
I
I'm not
think,
sure we have
if I
individual-
remember correctly,
yeah.
the latest advice was that if you see a ghost plate, like an expired temporary tag, for example, you're supposed to call 911.
911.
Because it could be used to do crimes.
Are they still?
And
asking-
311 would then just tell you that they're going to 911 or like noise complaints?
Are they still asking you to photograph it and text the photo?
I don't think so, not anymore. Yeah, for a while they were like, email this
Right.
specific email address and then.
Right.
that's-
Text
Well, we
mayor
took a
directly.
picture of it, there's nothing, it's a ghost plate, you can't get a
Exactly.
picture,
What do you
so what's
do?
the point?
I mean, I guess you have to picture the car to make the.
Right, or if it's an expired plate,
Right.
I mean, if it's in one location, they could hopefully send someone there within a few minutes.
which they don't.
Well, I don't know.
Okay, So for the February meeting, was that, I remember the flurry of emails, is that what it was about?
Yeah, so that they're gonna come and present some of their ideas, and then we can say which ideas we like, which ideas we don't like.
Okay,
Maybe
so we'll
write a
schedule that for February. The rest of it, I mean, 34th Street Busway, we're covering. Harold and Greeley, I haven't really heard much about, but that's a.
I've
DEC program.
Talked to, so one of our old community board members works for Macy's. And so I asked him about it and he
It's not
said,
that
there's- so, one of our former community board members, and he said there's no movement on this.
Okay.
So I don't think you need to worry about
It's a
this.
senior citizen.
And then, future of Fifth, which we haven't, I mean, I guess we'll wait until they issue an actual plan.
When they come to us, we can.
Yeah,
say.
I mean, the part we can think about is the bike lane.
Mhm.
The rest of it, I don't know how controversial it is, but, the bike lane is definitely one of the questions.
And they had the presentation. A Q&A.
Right.
You can download it online.
All right, and the other two, we don't have to get into now, but I've been representing us on the Penn working group. And it's a very slow moving train, so to speak. But at some
And
point,
all detached one from the other.
yes, there's three trains cutting each other off. Do they go through the New Jersey? No.
Oh my God, I've been on gateway calls for years.
Oh, boy. Yeah, well, they said this is, we've been meeting sort of, I don't know, bi-monthly and quarterly. But then they said it'll go to a slower frequency because the environmental process is like 2 to 3 years. So,
Yeah.
Do we have a position on through running, on weekend, and any of that?
we don't have a specific definition. How many hours? But this is,
Cool.
this is a topic for another meeting about what do we do with Penn Station issues as they come up, so.
Do you think that we could take a position on through run?
No, I don't.
Because of the nature of this committee and of the board?
I just, well, first of all, it's like what position, it's because it's coming up in the Penn swag. The we
Right,
think
right.
we want 100% through running is a hard position to support. You know, you have the railroads saying essentially no through running. We'll worry about that when the time comes. And is there some middle ground? You know, maybe, but I think there's a large technical issue that has to be resolved. And then the other issue for us is the demolition of block 7.
Right, exactly.
And the expansion,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
more.
Can we take a
you know,
position on
our
that?
issue. I think it's probably premature. They haven't even made, I've been going to these meetings for months and they have not made an actual presentation or proposal about block 780.
Okay.
Dealt with a whole range of options going north or east or west or south. But they haven't actually said, you know, here's what we want to do.
Okay.
There's no preferred alternative yet, so.
So this is not kicking the can down the road. This is basically what you say.
Yeah,
Okay.
Is there-
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Penn Clip is the old effort that we had to potentially rezone the areas around Penn Station, but
For pickleball.
yeah. So, I mean, I think we're waiting to see what happens with Midtown South, which essentially cut out like 80% of the area that we were looking at. And then, we are gonna issue, I believe, the planning study that came out of Penn Station, and then we'll decide what we wanna do. All right.
I do think, I don't know if anyone that matters cares what we think, probably not, but something about congestion pricing, since it,
Well, we already passed a support for congestion pricing. We
Yeah.
signed a letter with a bunch of other community boards.
Yeah.
After the governor had slowed the process.
or if like 2 or 3 months on, we have something that touts, hey, this is great. People are dying. Like I said, probably
Yeah.
anyone that matters doesn't care too much,
Are
but
we expecting to get a report from DOT?
It's still a live issue.
On, where we are in terms of the congestion relief?
No, I mean, this actually came up, with the question of whether the Trump administration is gonna try and stop it. And so the recommendation was for MTA to get out in front and start telling everybody how fabulous good job it's doing.
Right.
So they haven't started doing that. We've seen, you probably saw 7.5%
Yes, yeah.
reduction in the number that came out. That's what we've seen.
And a lot of anecdotal.
Yeah, which I mean, I walked that corridor
Yeah.
twice a day, to me, it's amazing, it's already.
quieter.
And the most amazing anecdotal I've heard is downtown on DC going into the tunnel there with the traffic people are saying, oh my God, where is everybody?
And we had a call in on something else, somebody who lived on Second Avenue, who said.
Yes, right.
So the traffic on Second
Right.
Avenue is right, and.
And I've heard that from some cab drivers and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. So Neil, you can pick up the old text on the website.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
All right, and
And I'll email
I
you and.
recently-
yeah,
Come
whatever,
here.
if you have questions or whatever, but yeah,
Yeah,
otherwise
I'll
take
take
a
a
crack at a draft.
Go and putting something together, see where we go.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So.
Doesn't need to be too long.
No, we're trying to, brevity.
Do I need to give a recommendation of each bollard? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, if you could list all 5,000 bollards.
Whereas.
And then I did,
Yeah.
You're fine.
I'm a bollard maximalist.
All bollards all the time.
Anytime there's a person, there can be a moving bollard.
Here's my opinion, is we should have more bollards, like, the flex posts they have for bike lanes.
Yeah.
Every like random thing should be fine. So like you could run through some of them, so we save money because we don't have to harden all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
But you don't know which one's gonna be hard per bollard. So you have flex posts where most of them are soft, and then every so often there's a hard one. You don't know which one it's gonna be.
The terrorists have to guess.
Or if one's like a stationary slugger, you have to just sort of go and put it down the road, like, so you never know when one is about to
Yeah.
pop up.
Yeah. Excuse me.
All right, happy 2025. Yeah.
He was
gonna be
But yeah.